Alright, it's everyone's favorite potato with legs here with a quick instructional video using my Moai 130 to show you how to do a basic bit of soldering. The whole point of this video is just an instructional on soldering, not a very large breakdown for the Moai, but for the Moai users, I will show you the parts that I did obtain. Now, first off, I have all the tools here that I'm going to need. Some of them I actually don't need, and I have made myself, starting with the basic soldering iron. This is your very generic soldering iron, and I bought it because it has a temperature gauge, so I could use it for silver soldering using a very specific high temperature silver solder. And it also works as your everyday soldering iron for soldering. I've got my soldering elements here. I've got a larger, thicker, more voluminous solder, and I've got a lighter, thinner, less voluminous solder for more intricate soldering applications. I also have this, which is a bought miniature vice grip, or not vice grip, a bought miniature clamp that I got on Amazon for cheap. And I have clamped it to a piece of wood, literally scraps put together. This is a Good Helping Hands. This is a blue silicone mat, which is ideal if you want to protect the surface of your table from heat, from heat, solder spills, or just the electronics in general. It's not mandatory, and you can see the surface of this table would be more than adequate unless I did something like this and left it there for a long period of time. But even on the silicone mat, you don't want to do that. One of the more important things that I have here that we're going to be using is this. This is called Desoldering braid. It is just your simple braided wire. As the length of it, the used pieces are snipped off, and fresh soldering or desoldering wire is exposed so that you can desolder or remove the solder from your electronic to replace parts, which is the goal of today. I've got the electronic piece that we need today, and I got a bag full of them. They cost about 50 cents a piece in bulk. Got a nice pair of Snips that won't see much use today. Alright, let's get that solder into the wick. Generally you want to heat up both the solder and the wick at the same time if you can. Sometimes it's going to fight you or take a little while. It has to absorb the heat, both the device and the wick. And once the solder gets hot enough, it'll soak right into it, as it is doing now. Let's get some more of that in there. Yeah. See it going, that, call it glassing. Now this is literally a cheap old, decades old Radio Shack desoldering blade that I picked up long time ago to do small projects, and it came with the soldering iron kit I got. It was a pencil soldering iron, which that's what this is this is a pencil point soldering iron. It's not what you would call a complicated one. It does the job, and it does the job just fine. If you think you need a better soldering iron than this, then more power to you. This soldering iron works very well, and they're inexpensive. There are what you may call gun type pistol grip soldering irons. I had one of those when I was a hobby train specialist. It was okay. I'll tell you, the copper pins on those were a pain. Instead of this pencil point, they had this loop, this copper loop that you would use, and the tip would heat up, and it ate a lot of juice. Oops, I accidentally bent the tip. Oh, I burnt it right there. Oopsie doodle. Paying attention. Pay attention, Mr. Kane. Now, if you are ever replacing electronics on something, knowing how to do this is great, and it takes very little skill. I am not a great soldering specialist by any means, and this is how you will learn how to solder. Alright, to remove it, I'm going to snip these all off. Now let's see if we can get more of that solder out. And in case you're wondering, this flux will clean up. It looks like a mess right now, doesn't it? Flux cleans up nicely. Alcohol. This desoldering this desoldering braid has picked up a lot of solder. In case you're wondering what I'm doing, I only have 2 hands. That's the helping hands are for. These vice grips are going to help create a constant downward force, which should allow this to fall out. Okay, old piece. Came out just fine. Well, I did lose one peg. Did I? Supposed to be 3 pegs on that side. 2 pegs here. So I have to go retrieve 1 peg, and that would be this far one right here. In case you're wondering, yes, I could start to feel it getting hot, and that's why I'm holding it so far away from the source. Copper transfers heat very easily. I hope my beard's not scratching this microphone too much. Alright. Hey, there it is. Look at that. This needs some flux. This is leftover from a different project. I was literally wiping flux onto something because I needed a lot of it for a big area. Makes this easier too. Yeah, it's still got too much solder in it. There we go. That looks beautiful. Okay. Old part, new part. Perfect. All right, I'm going to hold the piece in place with 1 finger because it will wiggle. And I'm going to use this to move these pegs. Well, you can't see what I'm doing, can you? All right, so well, on this, these 2 right here are not electrical. The only purpose they serve is support. So when you use this and do what you do, it has a leg to stand on, so to speak. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bend those outward just a little bit. So now they won't fall off while I start to solder. I'm going to use, for these outer ones, this thicker solder. And to guarantee its flow, even though this has flux in it, I'm going to get some, so it'll flow. And as far as basics go, I'm cleaning the tip out on the brush, on the sponge. As far as soldering tips go, you always heat the contact point up first. Once the contact point is heated up, this becomes so much easier. I am feeding the solder into the joint so we have good contact. That is perfect. Clean my tip off. Grab some more solder and repeat. You may not be able to see it too well, but the very tip of this solder, or the very tip of this has a flat tip that is basically 1 millimeter wide, and I love using it for smaller things. That's another perfect joint. The size difference between the two solders are immense. That is good because I do not want a lot of solder in these holes. I'm going to dip it in some more flux. I'm just scraping it across the top of my flux. You can see how much I'm feeding in there. It's about 1 centimeter's worth. I'm going to make this easier on myself by spreading the flux over all of these points first. And flux is like an oil. So if you treat it like an oil, you can heat it up and it will flow a lot more. Okay, there it is. I am completely done. Close examination of this. None of these contacts have solder going from one point to another point, so it's all clean contacts. I'm going to clean this up with alcohol now. Apart from the spot where I accidentally burnt the plastic connector, this is perfect. Now, in hindsight, I should have removed it. That's probably the only mistake I made. Live and learn. Oh well. And then it just pops right back on. Just like that. This is sandpaper. You may have no idea what I'm about to do with this sandpaper, and I bet you don't. Now that I need to make some room real quick, you go over here for me, buddy. Let's make some room right here for the sandpaper. Now what in the heck am I going on about? This knob. The knob that came with the Moai was not designed by Moai. That came in a kit that I have found on Amazon. You could buy that and get 10 for $1. And that particular knob is incredibly generic and not designed for the tolerances of the Moai. You may have noticed that when you press in, that there is a lot of resistance. You're not able to press in all the way. Sometimes it doesn't click. Sometimes it's frustrating. Sandpaper. You've got to remove about 1/16 of an inch from the back side of this. And then this one, I don't know how much I need to remove, but I'll be honest with you, I need to get started because it also has this lip around the entire outside that I am afraid is going to prevent me from using it on the Moai. I'm not going to show you anything else after this because this is going to need as much elbow grease as it's going to need. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to sand it down so it has free clearance to be able to push in. Oh, also, I'll provide links for all of this stuff, including this. I'm sure you know where to get sandpaper. This is 80 grit. This is 100 grit. This is 220. And this is all I'm going to do. So exciting. Therapeutic, maybe. It's ticking off quite a bit. My fingers are showing the work. Only reason why I have the 220 here is so I could take it and clean it up and make it smoother, because the rough sandpaper, as it takes off a lot, leaves it rough. And I'm just going to clean it up afterwards, just like that. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to finish sanding it, and I'm going to attach it to my Moai, and hopefully everything works out just as it works out for you. So guys, thanks for watching my video once again. You want finger guns?